Start with a very, very quick introduction because we are not the important ones in the room. You are, and the messages that we have. My name is Kent. I'm a principal consultant at CT Global. I work out of our office in Copenhagen, but these days, work is just a place. I mean, we do work all over the planet. The message that we have in here, the things that we want to share and show is, how do you keep your hybrid environment secure? We want to talk about some of the journeys that we have been on together with our customers for the past, I would say, 2 years, and especially right now, where we have more and more customers coming and saying, for various reasons, we need to move away from our local data center into Azure. How do we do that? How do we secure the environment? What do we do on this journey, and so on and so forth? And it's super interesting because there are so many different reasons why you want to move. There are so many loopholes. There are so many mistakes that we can make, and we still make mistakes. I mean, failing is perfectly okay. We have a saying, you have to fail, but when you do fail, fail fast, and that's fine. We'll fail, we'll fix it, and then we move on. If you don't have the guts to fail, you are never moving. And that's true especially for our Azure journey. So that's me, and I have my colleague, Andreas.
Yeah, my name is Andreas, and I'm a principal consultant also at CT Global, sitting at the desk just behind Kent, working with cloud infrastructure, cloud native, coming with our background in infrastructure. So where Kent is focusing on the whole endpoint journey, I'm focusing on the data center and cloud journey. So here to talk a bit about all the hybrid projects we have been working on and how we transition from having that central configuration management system, patch system, something like that, into a more cloud world where we more or less don't know where our devices are anymore.
Yeah. And we usually have a lot of really, really good discussions, and that's not because we disagree. It's just, discussions are, that's a motivator for moving forward. But at the end of the day, what I've learned is it's pretty much about guts, having the guts to make some decisions, and that's also the biggest challenge that we see out there. Some are never moving, and it's not because they don't know what they should be doing, but no one is just saying, okay, let's do that. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, but that's some of the stuff that we are going to uncover in here. And you are the one with the clicker.
I'm the one with the clicker, yeah. So we are here to talk a bit about securing our hybrid environments, where we are talking both this infrastructure server part and the endpoint part, because it's a transition we see happening in both places. But if we start with looking at the infrastructure challenges, some of the challenges that we have today is that we have a very diverse infrastructure now. We have many different workloads running, many different platforms. We have our infrastructure spread out over maybe multiple locations, multiple clouds, maybe disconnected locations. So to have a central management platform which requires network connectivity to all the endpoints is not a possibility anymore because maybe we only have internet connectivity. We have less and less servers and more services. So back in the old days, 2 years ago, we only had servers. We had our Windows servers and we knew how to manage them. But now we have IoT devices, container instances, app services, all of those more abstracted layers of infrastructure. So we need to take a new approach to managing and securing them, to get an overview, to get insights in all locations and so on. How many of you are currently in cloud? How many are multi-cloud? Few, yeah. So the multi-cloud is something that we see more and more. There are different clouds for different purposes. If you want to run Windows workloads, maybe Azure is the best one. But if you have a large Kubernetes instance, for instance, then Google Cloud Platform is often a choice. So we need to support those multi-scenarios. We don't know where our infrastructure is, just like we don't know where our endpoint is anymore, especially after COVID, I think.
Yeah, and the same, you can say the same about our endpoints in here. As Andreas said, during the pandemic, we all worked from home. I mean, there was no one in here, I guess, that didn't work from home at least, part of the time. And we had stories. We're doing a lot of work in the States, and in the States they're a little behind us when it comes to IT and how mature we are here in Europe, and especially here in the Netherlands. So I mean, their biggest concern was the VPN connection. They didn't have a big enough hole so they could actually work, and that's a huge issue. Where we saw other organizations, especially here in Europe, where it was like, okay, then I work from home. It didn't impact productivity. It didn't impact, my user experience, except now I didn't have to be caught in traffic every morning, so I was actually, hey, that works for me. And we also see this after the pandemic, because some of the users that were working from home, they don't come back to the office. We see that a lot these days. I was at a meeting yesterday with a customer. They had a tall building. I think it's like 8 floors. And then when I walked into the reception, I was like, hey, it now says Canon. Are you sharing the building with Canon? And they go like, yeah, because we couldn't fill the 3 top floors any longer. People are working from home. And we need to be able to support that. And there are lots of ways that we can support it, and then there are also lots of ways where we cannot support it. We cannot any longer, rely on a VPN connection in order to patch our software. We cannot any longer rely on a VPN connection to make sure that our devices are compliant. All of that stuff. So we need to make sure that we can always get some insights. And we need to make sure that everything else we have, we try to draw this circle. We are not good at drawing. We are not good at writing. But everything I have over here, with threat protection, patching, and so on and so forth, I should be able to do that on all of my devices, regardless of where they are. And then we also have to know that a device is a device. I mean, it's a device. It doesn't really matter what device we have. And one of the common challenges that I see is, it's not, that one is not broadcasting. Is that because we have, like that? Okay, so one of the challenges that I see is, we can't answer the most simple question in the world. How many active devices do you have in your environment? The answer depends on who you're going to ask. If I ask the network team, they will go in and they will look in, Palo Alto and say, well, according to, we have this many. If you ask the network team, they will say something else. The persons, taking care of SCCM and Intune, they will give you another number. And the thing is, and the truth is, I just need a number. And then obviously I need to know, okay, so how many, of the devices that we have been active over the last 30 days, how many of them are protected, how many of them are not protected, and so on and so forth. Super simple question. But there is no such number as a universal active device number. So you have to come up with something. You have to have the guts to say, well, up here we are looking at 3 different data sources. So we are saying, we know for this organization they're using, SCCM, Intune, and Defender. So we have decided to say we define an active device on the network as being a device that has been in these 3 or one of these 3 data sources within the last 30 days. That's it. It's not something you can look up in a dictionary and then there is a definition. We made that call. But once we have made this call here, now the entire organization can use this number, which is kind of cool because then we can say, hey, we have a decrease or we have an increase. We have devices that are not protected. We are all talking about we have the same North Star. Super important. And that's like number 1 in here, because then we can figure out if we are supporting all of these devices, if we are giving them the love and the care and the tenderness that they need. And a device is also a mobile device. That's the thing in here.
Yeah, and especially when with the more distributed workforce, we have remote workers everywhere now. Yeah. We cannot rely on VPN and all that. We need to make sure that all the applications that we need for being productive is available remote without a direct connection to the network.
Yeah.
We should get rid of the enterprise network as we know it.
And as I said in the beginning here, to those of you who showed up a little earlier, when we have 10 days of content in here, we could easily spend, just 2 hours on this alone, because we are seeing huge issues with legacy devices. We are seeing challenges with mobile devices. We are seeing challenges with, encryption. It's been a very common thing that, I only encrypt laptops. Okay. Now, during the pandemic, we had a customer where they didn't have enough laptops to give away for people, so they're actually taking their desktops. You need to take your desktop, bring it home, but that's not encrypted. No, but you have to be productive. Okay, it's a huge security risk, because are you protecting the Wi-Fi that they have at home that's also being used by the kids, and no, you're not. So there is just a ton of stuff in here that we need to be mindful about.
Yeah, and for those use cases, we're also seeing at the Azure Virtual Desktop taking precedence, because then people can use whatever device they have, and we can still keep the shell secure. So,
Yep. So those are definitely some of the challenges. I think I'm done with that one.
Cool. So then, what is hybrid security? How should we look at it? What do we do to get it? From us, the hybrid security should be built into everything we do. We should not rely on too many third-party agents and so on. So we see it with if we look at Windows 10, 11, we don't have agents to install anymore. We just onboard the devices into Intune, for instance, and then they are managed. The same with our servers. We have one agent we can deploy on everything, no matter if Windows, Linux, or containers. Then we can get them hooked into Azure, and then Azure can take care of the rest of it. We need to stay modern. We need to stay cloud native. We must make sure that we always are ready for the latest and greatest attacks and so on. So we can only get that with cloud and AI and so on. That's the power of it. It's impossible to build these kind of scalable platforms in our own data centers.
And the word that Andreas is using here, cloud native, it's you go like, oh, makes sense, but that's a huge discussion point at 99 of our customers, because when we say cloud native, what we mean is, your endpoints migrate, whatever solution you have, Carbon Black, whatever 10, 15 agents you have, locally installed on your devices today, migrate that into a cloud native solution. And as it is right now, that would probably be Defender, but then we have a huge discussion with the security team about, I have read this report that, Defender is not as strong as Carbon Black, for instance. And you find yourself in those endless discussions, and they're just killing everything. Because when we do cloud, we don't have the luxury of, upgrading or choose when we want to upgrade. So if we have some old legacy firewalls, for instance, or security controls, then we're just stuck, because we have to wait until they, upgrade and they support whatever latest version that we want to work with, and that's old-fashioned thinking.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we don't want to be Microsoft fanboys.
No.
But let's just say, well, from what we have seen, other security products, we have seen multiple customers where, like you were saying, they're running Carbon Black and Forcepoint and endpoint protection, and I don't know what. We had a few different exotic agents to get that same protection level that was similar to Defender, which is just built in.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is that many of the older protection platforms compared to Defender is meant for parameter security and are not thinking mobile. They're not thinking mobile first, they're not thinking cloud first, but they're thinking we are all in the network, we have a secure environment around it. But Defender is made for native devices. It can cover all devices, it can cover our device no matter where it is, servers and endpoints at the same.
And that's the thing, that's one of, now I wrote up here, the number one topic is, it's way too complex. So when we are talking about security, what we see is, once you get something that is built in that everybody understands, then we are actually increasing our security. We are reducing our attack surface. But when we have something that's super complex, because just one person thinks that is the best security solution, then he or she is the only one who knows about that. So if we have to make a configuration, hopefully they're not on vacation, hopefully they don't leave the company, and that we have seen so many times. And as Andreas is saying, it's not because we are fanboys, we have just seen that when we talk security, humans, us, we are actually the biggest risk, because things are just so super complex. And if we get something everybody understands and can read, we will increase
If it's
security.
too hard to maintain and understand, then it won't work.
Nope.
I mean, maybe Carbon Black is, just to take a product, is doing attack surface reduction just a little bit better than Defender. But then it doesn't do web category filtering. So then you need another agent for that.
Yeah.
And then you need another agent for this. So maybe just take the best that can cover the most of it. Maybe you miss out on that last percentage of protection. But if you don't configure that last percentage on the other products, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's where you'll see some major benefits in here. It's all the signals that we are having and that we are sharing between the different products. So when we have something, when we have something coming in, for instance, a phishing attack, well, all of a sudden, because we have one suite, everybody will be alerted around this. Exactly.
The holistic view.
Yeah.
To get that full circle view over an attack or breach or something like that is only possible if the products is talking together. So if we have multiple security products which is not connected together, then we need to go in multiple places to figure out the full overview. If we look at the Defender suite in Microsoft, everything is connected together. Everything is built to send data into Log Analytics and Sentinel, and we can easily get that central overview of our attack. So
Yeah.
any more for that?
No. So there is a lot of things that we have to do. So the second thing we would think about here is, okay, let's go do some stuff. Let's go be productive.
Let's just fix it.
Let's just fix it, exactly.
But don't.
But that would be an even bigger mistake.
We have so many customers calling us just to say, we need to help. We need help with this. Just help us with getting this thing installed. Yeah, but why do you want it? Yeah, we just need to get it installed. Let's just get started. And that's not the way we want to go. We want to make sure that we know why we are doing things and what we are doing to make sure that the business benefits from it. If the business doesn't get anything out of it, we don't get any money for it, and we don't have any projects. It's as easy as that. And nobody in management is caring about what firewall or Defender products we are running, so we need to translate that over to something else that they can understand. So productivity and easier work is something that they can understand. How many of you are familiar with the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework? A few ones. Everybody should go at least and take a peek at it. Cloud Adoption Framework is something that Microsoft has created to help companies transform into cloud or adopt the cloud, to support that whole journey. There's different categories of the Cloud Adoption Framework. It all supports all has the same categories, which is strategy, plan, ready, and adopt. And then here is an example on how it could look for Azure adoption project, where we always start with, maybe you want to have AVD running in Azure somewhere over here. But first we need to figure out what is the motivation for it. Why is it that we need AVD? What is it that's going to solve? Is it just because all the other cool kids have it? Or is it because we have an actual need for it? So we need to figure out that motivation. And then we need to figure out, what does the business get out of it? If the business doesn't get any more out of it, we don't get any funding for it. We don't have any justification. So our CEO, Peter, he always asks us, because we have Velux, the window manufacturer, is one of our customer, and I cannot count how many times Peter asks, but does Velux sell more windows if we help them with this? Because that's the only thing that Velux understand. If we sell more windows, we have a better business. If we don't sell any more windows, it doesn't really matter.
And that's so he's the perfect example of the super annoying person in a project because he always raises the why question, and that's really the thing. And you might go like, this is fine, I get this, but I'll bet you that 9 out of 10 projects that we begin, they do not have even thought about a business motivation. We had a really good example yesterday. We had a call with a customer that was calling us and say, hey, I need to fix some network connectivity for some Azure virtual desktops over here in India. And we were like, sure, we can help you with that. That's a brand new customer. We've never talked to them before. But before we do that, we need to get your manager in a meeting for just about an hour, and then talk to him about, what is your strategy? And the technician was like, yeah, sure, we can do that, but I just want you to fix this. But it actually turned out to be, and that was yesterday, to be a really, really productive meeting where the manager is saying, thanks, guys. Yes, that's right. We need to start, from scratch. Maybe we already have some things, but the business actually do not understand what it is that we are doing. And in order for us to get the money from the business, we need to be productive. We need to make a difference. And if we don't make a difference, you'll make the same mistakes as we have been doing for the past 20 years. We just start coding or we start configuring. And without a goal...
And that's why this guy had issues.
Yeah.
He just started configuring.
Yeah.
He didn't figure out, okay, we need Azure Virtual Desktop, the users are India, but you're provisioning it West Europe, latency, something.
Yeah.
So there was bad planning. Bad planning caused issues.
Yeah, and much more expensive at the end.
Yeah. Once we know the strategy and what we are planning for, we can start to make a plan. And planning is always boring, but it always makes a more successful project. Cloud is the largest transformation in IT that we have seen for many, many, many years, which also means we need new skills. So to adopt new technology, do we have the right skills? Do we have enough people to do this? We need to have a skill readiness plan because we need to learn the new technology. We also need to align who has the responsibility for what. So the organizational alignment of the platform is something that we often see people struggling with. We always see everybody wants to have this responsibility for Azure AD because everybody relies on it. So if I'm at the Exchange over, I want to have Azure AD because it's the foundation for Exchange. If I have Teams, it's the same. If I have Azure, it's the same. So we need to figure out who is the owner, who is the manager of the Azure AD, because everybody cannot be it. And then we need to make the plan, the adoption plan on how do we roll these technologies out, how do we adopt it. And not until then we can start to build the foundation, build the core platform. In Azure, it would be build the governance rule set, the security rule set, connectivity, and so on. In endpoint, it will be the M365 suite, conditional access, Defender, Intune, and so on. And not until there, we can start to look at onboarding things into production. But don't forget, before you start to onboard production things, to have an operational track. To have a track that continuously can monitor your workloads with, govern it, so make sure that you control your cost, your identity, your security, and your operations.
And that's. I mean, I cannot count the number of times where we went to someone and they go like, "So we have an issue now. We thought it would be cheaper for us to go into the cloud. It has turned out to be, we have no control of the cost. We have an engineering customer. They are kind of worldwide. They told us yesterday, but we have more than 100 different subscriptions. We have no control. We can't just, remove them because we do not know what impact that will have on business. We just know that right now we are pouring money, down the drain. That's super bad. But if you go back, 20 years when you're building your infrastructure, you would not allow that. You would secure your stuff in your own local data center. Maybe it wouldn't be a top modern data center, but you would still secure your stuff. You would build the network. You would build the governance. You would, have all of that. But in Azure, for some reason, control, or in cloud in general, control was never really top of mind. And now we're just paying. And for those of you who are not yet on this journey, make sure you don't pay in 3 years. Make sure that you truly understand this, and then get your governance model in place. Once you have that, then you can start doing the other stuff. But they are spending an obscene amount of money.
Yeah, sometimes cloud is too easy. Everybody can log into any portal and start to click on things. It's super easy to get started. And it's super easy to spend a lot of money. A lot of money.
Super easy to forget.
Yeah.
Oh, did I enable that? See me, I can spin up 100 virtual machines. Yeah, sure. Did you shut them down? Nope. Okay. Yeah, we could talk for days about this one here, but we are on a mission with 20 minutes left.
We need to catch a plane in a few hours now.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the big things also that we see people missing is this part here.
Yeah.
So we go out, we do all this, we implement the platform, the customer starts to adopt, but they forget to look into what they adopt. I mean, it's all about just moving stuff, but we don't know if what we are doing moving is doing good, is it doing well, are we spending all our money, is it secure? So don't forget continuously manage and govern your infrastructure. And then when we talk adopt, we can have those two tracks, the adopt track and or migrate track and the innovate track. So is it something that we are starting to maybe hybrid connect, slowly moving into the cloud, or are we innovating and spinning up new environments? So for the client side, it could be something like co-management and tenant attach, our devices that we already have, but it could also be that we start to roll over all devices into autopilot and get them to be cloud-only devices.
And especially this took me some time to truly...
You're also an old guy.
Yeah, I'm also an old guy. To truly understand when we had these discussions years ago. Because, you know, when I look at myself and when I look at my customers, so we're building something, then we're managing, we're operating, we are, you know, we definitely look at the insights and so on and so forth. And Andreas kept telling me, but you cannot do that in a cloud world. You need to set aside time to innovate. That has to be part of your working day. And if you do not have time to do that, then it's because, you know, you haven't done this correctly. And we'll get to that in a couple of slides, you know, how it is that we are building these environments. But that is, seriously, that took me some time. But you all know that it's going so fast these days. So if you do not have time, regardless of who you are, to sit down and innovation can be many things, then you have a great platform today. A year from now, not so great. So that's super important.
If we just look at Azure, then Microsoft is deploying 1,500 changes a day to Azure. If you don't spend some time adopting them, you don't get anything out of cloud.
No.
Then stay in your data center with your old VMware setup and 2008 servers and whatnot.
2008 R2.
Oh. Exotic. Cool. But it's important.
Yeah, it's super important.
So if we look at Azure Hybrid, so the whole Azure infrastructure hybrid track, Azure has super many capabilities that we can use to manage and govern our infrastructure and secure it with. But what with all our on-premise stuff? That is something that Microsoft is spending some years on now to try to enable, to bring many of our Azure offerings into our on-prem or other clouds. And here we have Azure Arc. So Azure Arc is the Arc into any other place. Marketing has really made high points here. It's a little agent we can install on our infrastructure to make it cloud-like. Is any of you using Azure Arc today? Little? Cool. Azure Arc is super cool. If you look at Azure Arc Agent for servers, it's free. Just use it. It doesn't cost you anything. It's the services that you put on top of it that cost something, just like on the Azure servers. So if you enable Defender for Cloud, it's the same for Azure servers as it is for your on-premise servers or multi-cloud servers. And it's really about bringing the Azure services, and it can do a lot. We will not cover much here. We will only focus on the infrastructure and securing part. But it can also be something like Azure Stack, where we are building the Azure Stack family has multiple offerings for building Azure-like infrastructure on-premise, either Azure Stack Hub or Azure Stack ATI, where we can now start to provision machines from Azure, but in our own data center. So instead of selecting our Azure data center, we can select our on-premise data center and get that same feel and look and same manageability. But Azure Arc is really the key here to get that to work. And it gives us the whole Azure ABAC connectivity, the whole Azure layer, with the Azure Arc agent connecting into the devices, and then we can just start to use the Azure APIs that we have today in cloud on anywhere. Using managed identities, getting a more secure environment, getting secure scores and all that. And for your part?
Yeah, so for the endpoint, it's really not any longer a discussion about, should we go cloud or shouldn't we go cloud? You have to go cloud. I mean, there are so many things that you can pretty much only do if you have your devices in the cloud. And I do understand that you might have some devices, if you're in the pharma industry, you're not allowed to do that, you cannot touch them. And I've heard that so many times, that's right. But then you probably have 85% of your devices where you can start to move workloads into the cloud. And there are so many workloads that you should be moving Monday morning if you haven't already done that. Stuff like getting compliance information back from your clients so we can start using conditional access, as Andreas mentioned. Getting your Defender control from within Endpoint Manager so we can actually use the same interface and strategy for our endpoints as we can for our servers. There are so many things that you should be doing. But the thing is, most often, and I think I made a drawing just before we started here. When I go in and have these conversations with our customers, instead of having someone who is like seeing all the possibilities, I often am met by someone who are like a little grouchy. You know the person who didn't have enough coffee at any point. So they have all of these, but I cannot go in there because I'm losing control when I'm patching. For operating system deployment, I need to build all of this because my business, they want to have a ready desktop, and if they don't have a ready desktop, the manager is going to, punch me. And I only support Windows, and there are all of these good excuses. But the truth is, often they talk about stuff that was maybe points they were told 5 years ago. Because they don't have a plan, they don't have a strategy for how is it that we want to manage our modern endpoints. Today in our organization, when we have a new colleague, we do not care if they get a Mac or if they get a real laptop. but that's not the case everywhere. I mean, we still see customers where they say, well, you can only get this, HP device, and that's it, and you can choose between these two models. And by the way, we have already made the decision. Here it is. It's like, okay. And I'm a new user, and I'm, super excited to start here, and you're giving me a device that I've never seen or used before in my life. So what we're saying in here, things have changed, and we can't always just listen to the ones who are saying nay, nay, and nay. If we take patching, for instance, this was true years ago when, a monthly patch was maybe 18 different patches, right? Now, how many patches do you get if we're patching Windows 10 to Windows 11? You're getting one. And then, okay, maybe you're also getting, a couple for .NET, but that's about it. So you're not the only one testing. I mean, you're not the only one patching. So before you patch, probably we have already patched 2 million devices on the planet. So how much testing do you need compared to the old days? And in all of your effort to do testing and being 35 or 40 days, having a patch cycle that is that long, forget about it. Your environment is insecure. We have customers now that are patching their entire environment within 4 days. They just made a decision. We'll just patch. Boom. 0 complaints from end users. The whole idea about then we cannot reboot and so on and so forth. Everybody understands it. Especially now, you can just, if someone is complaining about reboot, just show them, any headline from the news. Cybercrime, Ukraine, and then say, that's what we're up against. Do you still don't want to spend 2.5 minutes on rebooting? I mean, that should be a really arrogant person if they say yes. So the thing in here is, it's all about guts and just do it. That's it. That's the Nike thing. Just do it. And I do understand that the world is not that easy, but for the majority, do it. Make sure you have some support from management, obviously. Otherwise, you will do it, and then they will kick you out. That we don't want. But the thing is, we have the tools to do it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just, I was just thinking now you were talking conditional access and so on. So one thing I forgot here was the whole reason that we also want to move into the cloud native tooling and so on is that what is the biggest attack surface that we have right now? What is the most often cause that somebody is breached, somebody is having a ransomware attack these days now? Any guesses? What? Exactly, because their machine is compromised and because we are having a legacy AD, Kerberos. It's all about getting access to that first device, get their token, get to the next device, get that token, get to the next device. It's not possible here. You don't have an AD. You have a SAD, which is a whole different thing. We have conditional access. It cannot be breached in the same way. If we're using SCCM today, SCCM probably has privileges to do more or less anything on any device in our data center, in our endpoints, in our servers, everywhere. So do I get access to SCCM? I can do anything in the entire environment. And it's so easy to get those Kerberos tickets. So get rid of that. That's why we want to move to cloud native. If we have Azure AD in front, we can use conditional access. We can put in a whole different level of security measures, and we don't have that access by default. We can have privilege access and so on.
And there you have one of our biggest motivations, security.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Cool. We're down to 8 minutes now. I think I kind of covered this because, I mean, you know, I know you have heard about this many times before, the co-management, the tenant attach, and so on. What we're putting on top here is that now it's not something, you know, you can do next year. If you haven't started this journey, you're already a little late into the game. You need to do that.
Get started on Monday.
Yeah, get started on Monday.
But make a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Cool. So let's dive into some specific areas, be a bit more specific here. So if we look at patching on our endpoints, today many is probably relying on Configuration Manager to manage all or patch all devices. How many is using Configuration Manager to patch today, both servers and endpoint? Yeah, see, half the room. We also still do a little, I think, or have moved everything now.
We are only doing it so we can get some insights.
Yeah, that's right. But if we look into how do we do it in the cloud native row, if we start with the servers or the infrastructure side, then we have something like Azure Update Management Center. There is an offering available right now called Azure Update Management. It will be replaced, I think, later this year. Don't hang me up on that. With Azure Management Update Management Center, where we can use to patch servers, Windows, Linux, no matter where they are, through the Azure agent. So without using the current solution, which is Log Analytics and Azure Automation, this is a native thing in the Azure agent, using either the Azure Arc agent or the native Azure agent for Azure machines, to patch our machines, to monitoring them from a central place, with nothing else than the Azure agent. No third-party agents, no nothing, just the Azure agent.
Yep. On the endpoints, what I can only say here is you need to, our recommendation is get that workload moved away from SCCM into Windows Update for Business. Windows Update for Business is not the same as it was 2 years ago. There was a reason why we didn't recommend that 2 years ago. A lot of changes has been made. It's a much more mature service, and they have just released Windows Auto Patch, which is a service on top of Windows Update for Business. That was released at GA end of July. We have that running at 4 or 5 customers, various sizes. So far, no major issues. No issues with the updates. a couple of challenges with the service because it's a new service, so they're having some accounts, and those accounts are high-risk users all of a sudden in our environment, but we have already talked to Microsoft about that. But the thing is here, it's fully automated. Fully automated. It will automatically take all of your devices and divide them between these 3 rings based on some, and I know there are 4, but the test is a ring you have to manually add devices to. But you can go back to management and say, okay, with this service here, now all of our feature updates, we can promise you 95% success in updating within 30 days. With our quality updates, it's the same. We can promise you 95% of all of our devices are updated within, let's say, 20 days. You can kind of control that. And that's important for management, because then they can go back to the board, and all of a sudden, stuff like this is actually stuff that they're talking about at board meetings, because they are in charge. So they need to know that you have a process, and there is no better process than the one coming from the vendor, because you trust the vendor. If you didn't trust the vendor, why are you running a Windows device? Right? Yeah, we have 4 more minutes.
The next thing, threat protection, and it's actually threat protection and security posture management here. For servers, we have Defender for Cloud. Defender for Cloud can help us to protect more or less any workloads anywhere now. So we can use the Azure Arc agent to onboard them into Defender for Cloud. If it's a Windows or Linux server, we have Defender for Endpoint installed as well. We have our infrastructure layer and our OS layer now talking together. If we have SQL, web apps, and so on, we have vulnerability management, all available, one central console, and integrated with the endpoint manager that we know.
And on the endpoint manager side, I mean, I know you have seen Defender. What I want is every single morning, I want my folks who are responsible for security and the ones who are responsible for my endpoints to get in a 10-minute stand-up meeting. Look at these 2 numbers here, the secure score from Security Center, the exposure score from Security Center, and then say, what are our plans today? This has to be a part of your daily operational routines. When it's a part of your daily operational routines, you will increase security. We have seen that. And it's if you only look at this number, when your manager is in there because he or she got lost in a portal, and all of a sudden they go like, so what's the secure score? If you only look at it, once a month or once every second year, that's not good enough.
It will be impossible to get up. It will be too big a task.
Exactly. So there is no endpoint admin any longer. We are all security admins. That's really the message here.
And we have that same for the infrastructure part. So if we take the Azure Security Benchmark, which is Security Center, we have the same scores. It goes and tells you where you can improve your security. Of course, it doesn't fix it. It just tells you where you can do it.
Yeah, but then, as long as you know it, then you're half the way.
Yeah.
Cool.
And at least the security recommendations, when we look at the Azure side, is enabled by default for free. So you don't really have a choice or not. You have to use it.
Yeah.
Configuration management.
And we have 2 more minutes.
If we look at configuration management for our infrastructure and servers, here we are seeing Azure policies as being a huge thing now. Azure policies has been around for quite some time now for monitoring, auditing, enforcing configurations at the Azure API level. But we now, earlier this year, got the Azure machine configurations or Azure guest configuration policies, where we can now apply OS level policies through Azure policies on our device, no matter where it is, connected or not. So see Azure policies as PowerShell-powered GPOs for the cloud, more or less. You can control anything here.
And if I can just have you click next, because we are running out of time. So just next and next. This is like the last key message that we have. If you want to succeed in here, and you do, then you need to remember to fail fast. And the only way you can fail fast is if you start using DevOps infrastructure as code. Then it's not a problem when you fail. celebrate your failures, but make sure that you don't have to go through, UI after UI after UI after UI to fix that. You need to have everything ready as code.
Yeah.
Once you have that, then you will be ready to work with Azure. And it's a completely different way of working if you haven't done that before. But it's the only way you can truly survive.
The cloud has so many settings, we cannot screenshot everything as we did in the old days. We need a configuration file.
Yeah.
So
cool. That's it. So here's what you have
Monday's
to do on Monday.
list.
So as we said in the beginning, I mean, we easily have 10 days of material in here, but hopefully, some of our messages came across. And thanks for attending. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks.
And don't forget to enjoy the ride. That's the most important
Hang
thing.
tight.